Hello and welcome to this beautiful field of Turmusim. Turmus is a purple wildflower which blossoms in Israel in the late winter, early spring. And in this video, we're going to learn a lesson from the Turmus plant and see how it connects to this time of year around Parashat Tazria. When we read Parashat Tazria, it's always right after Pesach, and there's really three things going on at that time. Besides for the Parashat Shabua, which one of the themes of the parasha is Brit Milah, even though it's just one pasuk at the beginning. In the Syrian tradition, the maqam for Parashat Tazria is Saba, which is the same theme for Brit Milah. So you see, it's an important part of the parasha. And the other two things that are happening now is, first off, right after Bnei Israel left Mitzrayim, we know they encamped at a place called Marah, where the water was too bitter to be drunk, and God taught Moshe to throw a tree in the water and make it sweet. We know that this was around this time of year, end of Nisan, beginning of Iyar. Even though it doesn't say the exact date, we know from context of what happened before and events that happened after. And the final thing, and there's a recent development that happens this time of year, is we have Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron, and Yom HaAtzmaut. So what's the connection between all these things? So now we mentioned first Brit Milah, and now we'll go to an interesting story, an exchange that happened between Rabbi Hosha'ya and a philosopher, meaning a philosopher, someone trained in Western knowledge. So Rabbi Hosha'ya, he lived here in Eretz Israel in the 3rd century of the Common Era. He was one of the first Amoraim. He lived in Caesarea, and he had a Beit Midrash there with many students. Rabbi Hosha'ya was known to be a brilliant scholar, and in this encounter that he had with a philosopher, which was common for him, he often came into contact with non-Jews and would have to sort of defend and explain Judaism for them. So he was challenged. The philosopher said, if Brit Milah is so important, why did God not create man already circumcised? And Rabbi Hosha'ya's answer was something very fascinating. He brought some examples. He said, just like the Turmus plant, the Turmus plant has something very special about it, which the Gemara teaches. The seeds of it are edible, but they're very bitter. They can only be eaten if they're cooked 7 times. So if you want to prepare the Turmus seed to be eaten, you have to be very persistent. And this is an example that Rabbi Hosha'ya brings. He said, just like the Turmus was created, but it needs some sweetening to be able to be edible. And he brought other examples. The hardal, the mustard plant, also is inedible unless you process it. The wheat kernels are too hard to eat. You have to grind them. So too, man was not created perfect. As a matter of fact, everything in God's creation, everything created in the 6 days of creation, requires some asiyah, some action on the behalf of, on side of man to make it perfect. And this teaches us a tremendous lesson in the view of Judaism as taught by Rabbi Hosha'ya on how we are to view the world. What's our job here? We are partners with God in creation. We are here to take what he built and make it all the more perfect, all the more sweet. Because the world is indeed often a bitter place, like it's taught in Pirkei Avot. We are born against our will, we die against our will. We're here not by choice, and it is a difficult world, but through the Torah, through giving it meaning, mashma'ut, significance, we're able to make things more sweet. And that's going to connect us to the other things that happened around this time of year. We mentioned the story of Marah, right? So when God taught Moshe to throw the wood into the water, make it sweet, he's also teaching a lesson in this time as we're preparing for Matan Torah, that this is part of the Torah. That now that you exited slavery doesn't mean that the world is all butterflies and rainbow. It's a bitter place. You need to make it sweet, and the Torah will help you make it sweet. That's part of your mission. When we talk about making the water sweet, by the way, and also the Turmus probably, sweet doesn't necessarily mean, the water all of a sudden tasted like Gatorade. It just means edible, and that's, something that's not bitter is already sweet. But the final thing is that this sweetness, it's not just a mission. We say in the song Yasad B'Sudah, which is part of the Bakashot that we read on Shabbat, Yimatek Hamar B'Mahalalam, Baruch She'amar V'Haya Olam. May the bitter be sweetened by their praises. Blessed be he who spoke and created the world. So we see that also that idea that it's part of our mission to be partners with God in creation. But for Jews, it's also the secret to our survival. We have to have emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have to believe that in the end things will be sweet no matter how bitter they are now. And that's what's happening with Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron. Yom HaShoah is the pinnacle of the bitterness of our long exile, of our suffering as a people. But in the end, right after, we have Yom HaAtzmaut, which represents a sweet end. We took the bitter and we found a way to cook it. We found a way to be persistent and do something, do some asiyah. And with the help of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we made it sweet. So that's some lessons we can learn from the Turmus. And for Yom HaAtzmaut, Chag Sameach.